delighted to be joined by property developer Sue Elkington, and Sue's been developing properties for 42 years, so who better to speak to?
Thank you.
We're going to call this video Blueprint of a Refurb.
Yeah.
And Sue, where do you start? First of all, I guess the budget is very, very important to get that right.
Absolutely. First thing you've got to do is you've got to. What I always say to everybody is look to the end of the equation before you even start. Mm-hmm. You've got to look at what it is that you want to achieve, and then you've got to work your way back, and then you've got to add an enormous amount of contingency somewhere right in the middle of that. What you've got to be looking at is, why are you refurbishing this property? Are you looking to live in it yourself? Mm-hmm. Are you looking to flip it, or are you looking to rent? And if you can't rent it, and if you can't flip it, can you economically reverse those two situations? Mm-hmm. So if you can't sell it, then you're going to have to rent it, because you can only leave it going for so long. It's got to be fit for purpose. Yep. So the very first thing that you've got to look at is where you're buying it and why you're buying it. If you are buying a 3-bedroomed house, guess what? You're not going to get youngsters, you're not going to get young professionals, whatever one of those is. You're not going to get a young professional in there who's going to want it. That's going to be for a family. Now, if you've got a family, have you got parking? Mm-hmm. Or have you got double yellows outline? The biggest selling point at the moment with houses are local schools and the way the schools are performing. How do they get to that school? Is it easily enough to get to that school? Where are the shops? Is there off-road parking? Is there a garden? You've got to look at where you want to take this thing before you even start, and you should have done a lot of homework before you even go looking. Mm-hmm. You should know what the school's like. You should know where the hospital is. You should know about the transport links, and then yes, obviously budget. But don't start at the beginning. Look towards the end. If you're selling, you've got to look at what your selling price is going to be, and then you're going to have to work yourself back. Mm-hmm. But there's such a lot of things that most people don't take into account when they work themselves back. I scream at the TV every day when I see a certain TV programme and they say, the pre-tax profit is, and I'm saying, no, it's not. Mm-hmm. Oh, hell, it's not. Some of the things that people don't take into account. They don't take into account specialist insurance that can be quite expensive, because you're going to have a property that's empty and being worked on. You've got to take into account your mortgage payments. They don't take into account the cost of buying the property, mm-hmm. and they don't take into account the cost of the council tax. They don't apply 20 to 25% contingency, mm-hmm. and they don't understand, which is the most crucial thing in refurbishment, they don't understand the difference between profit and wages. Yep. Profit is, you give me something now and I give you £5, and I pass it to somebody over there and they give me 10. No personal input, no personal effort. That's it. No wages for me. That's fine. That's pure profit. You give it to me for £5, I do £3 worth of work on it. Then it goes over there for 10. I've not made £5, I've made 2. Correct. And people don't take into account their personal time, the effort that they put in. I see so many people who say, oh, we worked on it weekends ourselves. We've made, I don't know, after 6 months, okay, it's not massive, but we made £12,000 profit. No, you didn't. Because there were 2 of you working 2 days a week, which is 4 Mondays, over however many months. You probably haven't made a profit at all. And most people really don't understand how to work out how much it's going to actually cost, and whether or not it's even worth starting. Mm. A lot of people that come to me for advice, they tell me that they've bought it, and they've bought this awful term, below market value, which is a term I never use, because if that's what you paid for it, guess what? That's the market. That's the market value. That is the market value. It was that. It was like that because it was minging, because it was rotten. That's its market value at the end of the day. And so many come to me and I say, well, when we do the maths, this actually doesn't work. Mm-hmm. You're not actually going to make. Well, you are going to make, but is it profit or is it wages?
I think it's so important to know the true values of properties in that area, because if you get it wrong, you can end up actually, as you say, making a loss. Yeah. So it's really important to know your patch. Really important to know your patch, really important to know your budget, but majorly important to know where you're taking this vehicle, what you intend to do with it, and what can you really realistically expect to achieve at the end of it, and how much of yourself goes in there. And could you actually make more money elsewhere with less risk? Mm. And sometimes I see people, and yes, they have more money at the end of the project that they had at the beginning,
but they don't understand what it's cost them in between, and they don't actually take into account all the costings that's been involved, beginning to end, and that's it. You've got to understand that before you get into this game. It isn't as simple as it first seems. You have to break it down, really break it down, and you do that before you even go to start to look for properties. So you're armed and you're geared, and you know what your sums are before you start going in and make those offers.
Indeed. And one thing that you really believe in is investing in relationships.
Absolutely.
Because you speak to the fire officer, the building regs person, and presumably you have built relationships with builders and trades.
Yes.
And these are all things that are so vital to have the right people around you giving the right advice.
You must, and importantly, estate agents.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I actually make estate agents own my offer. And they're happy to present my offers because I don't present unsolicited offers. I don't see a property that's there at 110 and I then go along and insult people and say, well, I'll give you 85. Because I expect to get my butt kicked out the door because it's an insult. But when I go in and I start to explain that's why, because in actual fact, the property's only going to achieve 135 at best, and it's going to cost me 50,000 to put it right. And then I'm sorry, but I've got to make something for myself. And you need to break that down and explain that to sellers, explain what the situations that they're in. And it puts you in a much better bargaining position. Estate agents also start to take you seriously when you explain your offers to estate agents. Otherwise, you start to look a little bit like a wide boy going in, just throwing your business card in and offering really cheeky offers. And they don't really understand why you're doing it. It also helps you to understand the process, and it helps you in your in negotiating skills with estate agents and with vendors, and it makes you really polarise and drill down and look at what it is you're spending and why you're spending it.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess, would you say that you've kind of developed a kind of template that you work to, that you kind of stick to, that you know works in terms of the standards of your finish and that kind of thing?
Absolutely, yes. Standard of my finish, the standard finish is just uniform throughout. I don't care if I'm doing it for the rental market. I don't care if it's an HMO. I don't care if it's what they call a cosmetic refurbishment. Those joints have got to be smack on. The tiling's got to be right. The tiling's got to be smooth. The plastering can't be wrong. The doors have got to be straight. Everything's got to shut. People need to really, really consider how much work has got to go into a property when they first view the property. And in essence, when you're looking at what finish it is that you want to achieve, you've got to look at how far you've got to knock that premise back. If it's got to go back to the walls, you're going to have an awful lot of work to get the finish that you require. People don't understand how to view a house. They don't understand how to view a property. That's the issue. They don't really have the calculator clicking. As I'm walking around a property, it's literally going tick, 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 tick. I can walk around a property in 20 minutes and I can come out and give you a quote because I've done that many.
How many is it, Sue?
134.
134.
42 years. But this is something that I've acquired. It's a skill that I've acquired. People need to take the viewing of the property much more seriously. You've got to have a 20 to 25% contingency in there, and you've got to expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
You've also got to know what your costs are really going to be.
And through the process, you've also really got to act as kind of like a project manager, because you've got to manage other trades. You've got to make sure that you get everything done in the correct order.
You have.
And, you know, again, as we said in the other interview, it really is a matter of really digging down on the detail. And I think that's where a lot of people fail, because they do not realise the amount of detail you need to go into.
It's with everything. It's with everything now. Things have come on such a pace. Your customer base expects so much more from you. And so when you're pitching a property out there, they are going to have seen some pretty nice stuff. You know, you've got to have yours up there. There is an order of works. You start at the top and you work your way down. All your wet trades first, down to brick, then the wiring, then the plumbing, then it's the wet trades, and then that's got to go. And then you don't bring your timber in, because if you bring your timber in and you bring your doors and your skirts and your architrave in, whilst your plaster's still wet, guess what? They're going to take up all the moisture. You're going to end up with what? And then that's not even... There so is an order of works that you have to do things in, but the biggest issue that you're going to have with anything is managing people. Do you know what? You can send a skirting board back. If your builder's coming in a grump, you've not... And I had a conversation literally just this morning, with one of my trades, and said, what you've got to understand is every single trade on this job has got their own opinion. The electrician thinks one thing, the plumber thinks another, the plasterer's not very pleased, and to be quite honest, you're not making yourself very, very properly with the plumber either, and the sparky's not happy, because everybody's got their own viewpoint. And it's hell's game as a project manager. Project manager is about deadlines, it's about budgets, it's about standard, but it's the P word every time. It's about people. And that's the skill that you need to hone, and that's the one that you've got to develop.